Hey, what's up, internet? It's that Beasley boy. I just wanted to make a video I've been meaning to make for a while as it pertains to HDR on the 900 and the 930e. A lot of people I see in comment sections and the message boards and such saying that the first time they experienced HDR, it just didn't blow them away. They didn't see what the big deal was. And lots of times, these people unknowingly were blocking the HDR either from their TV or they didn't have their TV in HDR auto, so they weren't seeing the optimized HDR for that particular video that they were trying to watch. In one instance, especially with the 930 and the 900, as we all know, only HDMI 2 and 3 or HDMI at full bandwidth. So this leads a lot of people to use splitters if they have a lot of components hooked up to their TV. In one instance, the guy, he had a splitter, and unfortunately the splitter was not, I believe it was HDMI 2.0 compatible. So even though his console was outputting HDR and his TV was ready to receive HDR, when the video passed through a splitter, it wasn't allowing the HDR to pass through a splitter. So if you're running a splitter, just make sure that you have a splitter that does allow for HDR. If not, you're not going to see anything. In his case, he had it on HDR and he just wasn't seeing any results, so he just thought his HDR was uneventful. The second thing is this HDR tone mapping video that I want to show, and how we should really all have our TV set to HDR auto, so your TV can determine the best HDR to display on your on the screen. So I'm going to put the link to this in the description, but I'm going to play it. This is the only YouTube video where HDR10 actually looks better than the auto setting on your 900 or your 930e. So let me play this video. And if you don't know how to get to your HDR settings, you just go into picture adjustments. You want to go down to the advanced settings, down to video options, and hit your HDR mode. So as you can see, mine is set to auto. Normally this is going to just automatically default to the best HDR signal that's being output to your TV. Now, just out of curiosity, I wanted to change this to HDR10, and this actually looks better in HDR10 than it does when I have this set to auto. I mean, it may be subjective, but to me, this video looks better when I switch this to HDR10. And those of you that have the 930 and the 900, like I said, I'm going to put the link to this in the description of the video. Check this video out and let me know if you guys are looking at the same results. Now, to my knowledge, having the TV set to auto should have automatically maybe defaulted to HDR10, because it should have defaulted to the best HDR video signal, but it didn't. I had to manually go in and select HDR10 for this to happen. Now, some of you may automatically have HDR10 set as your default HDR mode, which I don't recommend. This is the only instance where I believe the TV didn't automatically kick over to the right HDR setting. If you have this set to HDR10 and you're watching a video that isn't optimized for HDR10, your HDR is going to look like trash. I'm going to show another video, Spider-Man Homecoming again. You know, that's my go-to video for all things testing out with this TV. And I'll show you what I mean. Now, this is running Spider-Man Homecoming on Vudu. Sorry. And I believe this is HDR10, but let me just make sure. Sorry for the shaky camera, y'all. Okay, so it's set to auto right now, which looks perfect. This is perfect HDR. When I go to HDR10, this looks horrible. I don't know how. It may look a little good on this phone, but in real life, it looks like somebody took a Crayola crayon and like marked it over the TV. And if you guys have Spider-Man Homecoming, you can check this out also. Switch between HDR10 and auto mode. And this movie looks horrible in HDR10. If your first experience watching HDR was HDR10 in this movie, you would want to take your TV back. So by default, you want to have your HDR mode to auto. If anybody else has any other suggestions, please talk about it in the comment section. Let's help each other out. But let me know what you think.